Hello there. Thanks for joining us on the midweek edition of Journalists Hangout. I am Kemi Fola Adeyemo. Today on the program, FG commences payment of minimum wage for workers below 30,000 naira salary benchmark as Labour urges FG to reconvene committee. Plus, organized private sector says Nigeria loses 6 trillion naira to the APAPA gridlock. And later on the show, Emir of GWOZA returned home. It's coming 5 years after displacement by Boko Haram, as ZAMFARA Director of Budget regains freedom from kidnappers. Today, I'll be hanging out with MOJEED JAMIU and AYENI Kunu. Journalists Hangout starts now. It was an American novelist, Louis L'Amour, who said victory is won, not in miles, but in inches. Win a little now and hold your ground, and later win a little more. It's perhaps the strategy the Nigerian labor unions will look to apply as the battle for implementation of the new national minimum wage rages. On Tuesday this week, President Buhari approved the immediate implementation of the new wage for federal workers who are earning below 30,000 naira. Chairman, National Salaries, Income and Wages Commission Richard Egbole then told a news conference that it would be backdated to the day of the signing. It's not yet uhuru though, because federal workers earning above the approved wage will not benefit yet, because negotiations are still to continue between the federal government and the Joint National Public Service Negotiating Council. Well, that's the thrust of our discussions as we begin today on Journalists Hangout. MOJEED and AYENI, you're both welcome to the program. I'll begin with you. AYENI, are you comfortable with this latest announcement, and especially the speed, the kind of speed that have been achieved in this negotiation process?
Well, if you look at what has happened to the document since April, you'd have expected government to expedite action. And don't forget that there were lots of battles leading up to the 2019 elections. I think very strongly that when the discussions were at its highest, it appeared as if the government gave it to the people just for political reasons, and the fact that there needs to be some form of consolation going into the general elections that we had in February 23rd of this year. But since the federal government did the needful as of then, you'd find out that it appears as if there's been a relapse, and certain persons are not capable of remembering that it was a very needful document that they needed to expedite action on. And don't also forget that controversies abound prior, when it was agreed that 30,000 should be the ideal for the Nigerian worker. So the reason why government has done this again is what I've been very curious about, because if you remember very well, in the last 2-3 weeks or a month, it's been discussions around getting a cabinet in place to keep Nigeria running. And I think that it is characteristic of this administration to more or less parry very salient issues. As much as the minimum wage is important, if you even look at the conditions surrounding it, it appears as if people are still going to wait. That's what the chairman of the Salaries and Income Wages Commission mentioned, Mr. Richard Egbuna, that they have to still resort to the Accountant General to get it into something that is feasible. So as far as I'm concerned, when you deal with the people that actually, more or less till the soil of the nation, I think you should address their issues very importantly, such that they could take your pulse and know they're very serious about their cause. Right.
I like that phrase now. Workers who till the soil of the nation.
Yes,
it's rather wrapped. MOJEED JAMIU, there's a bit of more consolation now. No matter when the Accountant General will, finally give a nod in this direction, even after the president has already given his nod. But then it's going to be backdated to the date of the president's signing. How much weight does that carry with you?
Yeah, I think I'm happy that it's going to take effect. It's going to take a life from the 18th of April, when the president appended his signature on that agreement. So at least workers between levels 1 to 7 can say, yes, we have something to hold on to, because I think levels 1 to 7, I don't think they end up to 30,000. Yeah. From 8 and above, that's when you see
30,000.
So the issues here, like Kuno said, is must we really wait this long, and how long do we knew this was coming on, and now you see, if you know the bureaucracy that you need to pass through to get money out of the system, then you will marvel. Now, with the president's approval, now today is July 17. Let's assume that it's today, before any of these civil servants can get this thing out. Now, from the Ministry of, when the president approves something, it will go to the Ministry of Finance. From the Ministry of Finance, it will go to Accountant General's office. From Accountant General's office, I mean, it will now go back to the different ministries. So it's going to be a long wait, but the beauty about it is that the those in salary and wages have been able to, I mean, extract that fact that this will take effect from April 18th. But then, for those between 1 to 7, like I said earlier. And from the way it's been structured, they also noted in the agreement, which I saw earlier today, that it will even take into cognizance the 5 different structures they have consolidated salaries, like the consolidated health salary scheme, right, consolidated civil service scheme,
health scheme as well.
Yeah, consolidated university salary scheme, and I think there are 2 others for
the teachers.
There are about 5
about 5 of them. So it's also take into cognizance, because those sectors are already on an enhanced salary package. Even at that, even with the enhanced salary package, you still discover that some of them still take below 30,000 per month. So those are the first beneficiaries of the scheme. And I hope it won't take another round of work to rule or industrial action before those,
the remaining,
before the big boys, those from level 8 and above will start enjoying it.
And in any case, now we're also seeing the NLC come out to refute now reports of them embarking on the strike in view of this, some have said, a snail pace now of considerations at all levels. But then NLC is saying it will not go on strike. Let these negotiations continue. It's also doing so because it doesn't want to cause an industrial crisis as a result of this increased minimum wage. Are you envisaging some form of reaction now or a change in stance from the NLC?
What I want the NLC to do is to insist that everybody gets paid. Because when that particular document was signed, it was signed to affect every worker.
So they're well entitled.
Let me tell you, I had worked with government before, until some years back when I disengaged to just get into the private sector. There was a particular year where we were told, and in fact we saw it happen, that people from levels 3 or 4 to 7 got the 13th month allowance, as it were, or the 13th month package or salary, and those from levels 8 upwards were never paid. I think it ridicules government and its policies when those under the auspices of the federal government of Nigeria, or in another case, the state government of a particular state within the country, will be paid a certain amount, another person will be left. I think that any policy that actually more or less separates what is due some workers for best reasons known to those who initiate such policies must be reconsidered. When Labour fought, Labour did not fight for levels 1 to 7. They did not fight that the implementation is actually separated and done at different times. The fight of Labour with government was to effect a living wage for every Nigerian worker, which they achieved when the president appended the signature April 19th of this year. So if 3 months after the appending of the needful signature of the president, we still do not have that come to be, then I think strongly that it's a reflection, in quotes, ineptitude, or perhaps lack of the ideal initiatives to ensure that people who muzzle actually the ox ensure that that ox that actually tread out the corn is not muzzled. I've mixed it up there, but the emphasis of what I was driving home is that you have to try and put the people at the core of whatever it is that you're doing. Let me say this. If you check 2015, when this particular labor issue should have been rested, government took sleeping pill and did not remember that according to the real book, it should negotiate with labor every 5 years. It was until they took them on those particular legal documents that you should have spoken with us that they jolted out of the sleep. And don't forget that the erstwhile Minister of Labour, Chris Ngige, did a disservice to the Nigerian worker. I wouldn't say to the federal government, because the Labour Minister was expected to understand the expectations of the people. Having been working in sync with Labour, it was a disappointment. I'm saying here the world could hear. I'm saying that even the organized private sector gets hit anytime the Labour, particularly the representatives, call strikes, because one way or the other, one affects the other. So let us not continue to quote this disaffection in some grandiose expressions. It is completely negative that at this point the Nigerian worker is still waiting to have his or her entitlement in the bank account.
And even with this segregation now, it will no doubt also have some form of impact negatively, even on the private sector, whom the government expects will toe the line of the increment in the first place, MOJEED. Because indeed, after all, it's not only levels 1 to 7, you know, that feels the crunch of the hardship of you know, hard times in the country.
Except government is saying that they are encouraging people not to go to school, or to do menial jobs, or to remain as junior workers for life. That's why they are segregating these payments. Like he said, this negotiation was for
all-encompassing
all Nigerian workers, whether you are on level 17 or level 1. I mean, it's for everybody. So, but I understand that the federal government has been having some difficulties in paying salaries that they've been going caps in hand. But then, while agreeing at the 30,000 minimum wage, a lot of concessions were made, and also I expected that the government would have factored in a lot of things, blocking some leakages to ensure that the workers that are very key. Well, some might say that some of these workers are not actually giving their best, but that is a story for another day. If we agree that workers will be on a minimum wage. Me, I'm an advocate of a living wage and not a minimum wage, but that is also another story. Because even the 30,000 we are talking about, how many people can survive on 30,000 a month, even in the remote village in Nigeria? So it's something that should not even be debatable. And also, why do we have to wait for the 5 years to start a negotiation? Since it is in the Constitution, it's in the it's something that is approved by the ILO, that wages should be reviewed every 5 years. But I am also an advocate of the California initiative, where wages are done on a yearly incremental basis, so that it won't come as a big bang when you want to move from 18,000 to 30,000, because it's like doubling the pay. So, and we have a government that is already under a serious burden of a wage bill, so to say. So that's why the approach of segmentation, or what the guys in Oshun.
MOJEED, kindly pause. Let's bring in one of our viewers now. Emmanuel from Rivers State, you're welcome. Please join the conversation. Mohammed from Rivers, carry on, please.
Yeah. Well done. Good day, ma.
Good evening. Good evening. You're live. Carry on.
All right. Please, I really appreciate the discussion, because issue of minimum wage of the workers. You see, federal government, they are really playing with Nigerian workers. That is a fact, and I don't know the way they rule their government, because they take Nigerians like fools. Because ATC, they want to use the issue of minimum wage and then finish their second 4 years without doing nothing to Nigerians. And if Labour today, they agree they have to stand up and then fight this issue very well. Because Buhari government and his cabinet, we don't even understand where they're heading to taking this country to.
All right, Mohammed, many thanks. Now, of course, we're seeing an obviously displeased viewer there. But then let's move on, because there's also another committee. I'm concerned. I hope it's not going to be like a duplicity of committees now, all having the same mandate. Gentlemen, let's recall the Oyoita committee that was inaugurated in May. Boss Mustafa gave that committee a 4-week mandate. As at 2 weeks after being set up, we understand that, of course, the ministers that were supposed to join in that committee had, of course, after the 4-year, right. So there doesn't seem to have been any progress from that side, talking about this Joint National Public Service Negotiating Council. Where does that leave the remaining grey areas?
In the first place, let's say here for the records that the functions in the respective ministries should not be at comatose, because the permanent secretaries have the mandate of ministers to ensure that there is functionality of the ministries. So leaving the ministers out of office, or the fact that the ministers have rounded up their tenure, shouldn't affect the functionality of government. So one. Then secondly, I have to say that we overburden ourselves by creating structures within structures. The Oyoita committee essentially wants to do what Labour has rounded off. Because if you look at it, whenever you talk about the civil service where I've worked before, many people do not even understand that the demotivating factors is the reason why you've not been able to get the best out of the civil service. I can say here for the records, some of my bosses are watching, I am, or I was, an excellent product of the Nigerian civil service. I can say it anywhere in the world. I can hold my own anywhere. I've been privileged to be trained by the British, the BBC as it were, and they really knew that I brought to bear something of quality whilst with government. It then means that the excuse of saying that people within the government circles do not know their onions or certain things is simply because they've not addressed the motivating factors. There are many persons with immense qualities within the circles that can do the job. Moving back to where we were, I have to say that the Oyoita committee is, in the present, a very needless one, because every civil and public servant in the country has a record of what they earn. And as a matter of fact, one of the problems we have internally when I was there is the fact that some people in government that work for government or work with government earn more than some people that work with the same government in a country. I think the first area that must be addressed is the disparity of salaries and allowances of people who work for the Nigerian government. You hear that somebody who is with the Ministry of Interior or works with the NNPC earns more. Then if the person earns more, the market the person will be going to has to be different, because everybody who earns disparate salaries goes to the same place to shop. So in the first place, I think if government is sincere, is to first of all address that disparity in earnings.
Let's also give room for Ayomi to join in from Lagos here. You're welcome.
Hello?
Ayomi, good evening. You're live.
Sorry, this is AYENI, not Ayomi.
AYENI, apologies.
From Abuja.
From Abuja, all right. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. I want to comment the panelists on your there, or the good contributions they have made. I want to comment the members of your panel for their contribution, especially MOJEED. You talk about living wage and not just the minimum wage. But it's very, very embarrassing that for government not to be able to implement this living wage or make this minimum wage all at the go. I'm trying to correct it. I think it's the becoming of federal government. The workers are the ones bearing the burden of the whole country. You can see many who are not working, but it depends on these workers. And yet, even late after 5 years, you are putting in a minimum wage, and you are still finding a way not to pay everybody. I think it's embarrassing. The government should have everything. This is my contribution. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, AYENI. All right, so gentlemen, and then still on the issue of NLC and the aggregate unions now trying to avert what they call an industrial crisis as a result of their insistence on this 30,000. We've also seen TUC agreeing to a downward review. Initially, it was a 66% for levels 7 to 14. Now it stands at 30%, it says. And also he had a downward review for 25% for officers between the levels of 15 to 17. Mojeed, how much longer do you envisage that, NLC's patience, workers' patience will last in view of this back and forth?
I think the leadership of the workers at NLC, TUC, and NECA, and all of them, the workers, the various workers' unions, I think what they should do is to look at that California arrangement, which was signed in Sacramento about 25 years ago. That allowed for a gradual annual increment, which is far, far better. It's easier to achieve. You can be having like 3% every year. 3% yearly in 5 years gives you not just 15%, it gives you far more than 50%. This law is like calculus. It's an incremental thing. So it's better than you go and push 50% on a government every 5 years.
But even this initial battle still rages.
That is it. And now it's because it's difficult for government to start implementing this. One of the options thrown before the labor during the negotiation was, if government cannot afford to pay this, do we downsize? They started from 52,000 minimum wage. It was at a point it was down to 26,000. Now they were pushing up and down before they agreed on 30,000. So I would expect that now that government has agreed to start, it should go beyond just a particular rung of the ladder. It should be for everybody because, like he said, they all patronize the same market. And the issue of disparity, where somebody who works with FIRS collects more than those in Ministry of Information and those in NNPC, which is also a parastatal of government, and jumbo pay, they all access the same market. So these are some of the issues that should be tackled. And probably, we are even talking of federal government now. The states are
these even legal fees now? Are these even, legitimate fees now?
That is it. And even we have not even talked about states that even at 18,000 minimum wage, only about less than 10 states of the federation are able to pay. So it is the federal government that is still talking about
all right,
that.
Mojeed, apologies again. Far North, Sunday from Borno State. How are you this evening? Good evening. Please join in. Turn down the volume of your TV set and join the conversation, please.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Honestly, hello, can you hear me?
Carry on, please, carry on. All right. I'm talking about state governments. Let me follow Mojeed's cue now. Oyo State, for example, now Governor Makinde has already said, as for him, he can't. He really can't afford that, having to pay 30,000 naira to each worker. Where does that leave this? Could that be what's stalling progress?
He has said it, but that cannot.
And that's just one state.
He has said it, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to keep to the books. The particular paperwork that was signed is for the Nigerian workers. It is not for one state or the other. Although there have been discussions around getting them to talk more at the level of the respective states so that at least every state can pay what it can. But you see, it brings us into another phase of discussion, which is that at 18,000 naira, what's the reason why these states that were owing? The president, to be fair to him, has released about 2 or 3 tranches of the Paris Club refund. And I remember very clearly that at each of the release of the refund, the president mentioned that they should please, he even apologized and he actually implored them that they should pay the workers in their respective states with the monies. But you see, you cannot take away financial impropriety, because I remember that after the release of the second tranche, there were certain issues regarding some people transferring money. Abdulaziz Yari of Zamfara State was in the eye of it. The former Senate President, Bukola Saraki, a lot of leading government figures, as of the time they released the first and second tranches of this money, were actually smeared with the fact that certain monies moved from there to other places, out of which some of them wanted to purchase property in Lagos. So if you look at these things that happened, I think very strongly that the question to be answered is, in the first place, why couldn't you people, despite the monthly allocations, despite the internally generated revenues, despite all of the monies not accounted for, you couldn't pay the monies?
Absolutely. A fantastic place to rest this subject for now. Still to come on Journalist Hangout, organized private sector says Nigeria loses 6 trillion naira to the APAPA gridlock. Stay with us. Great, thank you for staying with us on the program. For years now, successive governments in Lagos State have battled to address the menace of the APAPA gridlock, which hasn't let the state optimize its economic potential. Bad roads, trucks and articulated vehicles lining the bridges within APAPA and further into the city have become common sights. A presidential task force constituted to clear the area within 2 weeks seems to have lost its initial momentum, and now the nation's organized private sector says Nigeria has lost about 6 trillion naira across the different sectors, this due to the APAPA gridlock. The OPS, under the aegis of the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, said this at the 62nd Annual General Meeting here in Lagos, that operational hiccups still exist at the ports. The group now wants urgent infrastructure development for businesses to operate optimally at the ports. What's your reaction to this, MOJEED? Humongous amounts. What's your take?
To break it down, according to the richest man in Africa, he said those in doing business in that Nigeria loses about 20 billion naira daily as a result of the gridlock in APAPA. We have about 5,000 articulated trucks, I mean trailers, container carriers, tankers, that goes into APAPA on a daily basis. And to imagine that the man hours that are wasted, recall that shortly before May 29 inauguration, the federal government issued a statement giving the trailers 72 hours to vacate, but the place is even worse than it was before the ultimatum now. And we are also on the tracks because the Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, promised that in 60 days he's going to clear that urgent mess. And I think we are close to the 60 days now. Now, I don't know why it is so difficult. APAPA port is one of the busiest ports in Africa, if not in the world. And you don't want to imagine the state of the road. And you see, and on average, on a weekly average, you see a 40-foot container falling on, causing a lot of damage. Lives have been lost, properties have been lost. And I don't know what has happened to the negotiated arrangement between the Dangote group that opted to fix the road in concession for tax debates. So I think we need to ask these questions, because that's, I could recall there was so much fanfare when the minister for, the then Minister for Works, Power and Housing, Fashola, came to Lagos to sign the agreement and flag it off. So some work is being done there, but it's at a very, very slow pace.
As against the atrocities, going on there, the lawlessness.
The lawlessness. And so, sorry, I think I must add this, that the security personnel that are deployed to even ensure free flow of traffic there, they have converted the place to a money-making venture where they actually profit from the chaos there by taking between 10,000 and 20,000 from the truck drivers, I mean, for easy passage, so that they are even the one directing them to pass, to drive against traffic.
The APAPA gridlock situation, how does it appear to you, looking at this lingering war? Is it a matter that clearly lies at reorientation of the psyche of the average man? Be you, in his words now, be you be an officer, you could be an officer or you could be a truck driver. Is this who we really are?
Well, there's something that we have to look, there's cause and effect. And effect definitely will have its consequences. That is what we have to look at. Oftentimes, people want to take away the role of government in virtually public life. It is not possible. The government remain administrators of the affairs in a place. And unless and until government, first of all, set the pace, it is very difficult for people. And that is why when we leave Nigeria, and maybe many people travel to other parts of the world for the first time, there is what we call culture shock regarding how they live their lives there. And oftentimes, the caliber of those who should know better here, when they travel abroad, they behave themselves. That tells you that there is something either deliberate or dysfunctional in their system that is not making them do what they find. Let's say this. January, February, March of this year, the Customs Service there made 311 billion naira. 2018 calendar, 1.12 trillion naira was made by the Nigeria Customs Service, out of which 60 to 65% of that money came from that APAPA ports. I have lived at the bus stop known as Warehouse there before, where you can walk through Alhaji Karim, you walk through Wilma, Berger, go to New Road, Greenland. I can describe the ins and outs of every Muibi, of every area there. And when these monies over the years were being made, government did not deem it fit to actually create a particular package. In fact, just across the port there's a particular parking space meant for the articulated vehicle. It has not been completed in 15 years. People get paid, contract get cancelled, it gets re-awarded. See, let me tell you, whatever is happening in APAPA now is because people take advantage of a system that doesn't call people to account for the things they don't do right. Yeah. And that will give those who are now lawless. Noji talks about those army officers, those security operatives that are on that road. When you don't close the cracks in your wall, lizards will make your home their hacienda, as they call palatial homes in Spanish.
In Spain.
So,
right.
so as we speak, first is the fact that government has made, I have read out figures. Could the government have taken 25% of that amount? Now, the Dangote discussion he mentioned should have actually taken off. That was about 3-4 years ago, where government said, we're going to give you tax relief for a certain period of time. As a matter of fact, Honeywell was also involved
right,
in
because
that.
I was about saying it's not exclusive to the Dangote.
There were about 3.
Yeah.
In fact,
right.
counterpart funding was meant to even be brought in by the government.
I
Honeywell
even reckon more companies will jump at this tax.
No, it's not going to, you know, why Dangote got the, Najid, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's okay. Why Dangote got the edge then was because they believed that, as a matter of fact, they wanted to use cement. They felt, they did a comparison of the roads done with asphalt and the roads done with cement and said the one done with cement, well done, was far better and it lasts longer. So they felt Dangote's got the cement. Dangote obviously is in the construction. That is double advantage for us. Let's make him do it. Honeywell brings some money. The federal government brings some money. We celebrated the agreement. As a matter of fact, if people check on some of my platforms, I wrote a comprehensive report of how much Dangote should pay in taxes compared to
what he's offering.
And I did it over a 10-year period. We're here.
Let me compare your calculations now with MOJEED's. Now, like I said, it's not exclusive to one man. You know, other companies would, you know, see the opportunities, like we usually say here, even in the problem, opportunities abound for us to thrive in. Let me have your take.
See, I don't know why we find ourselves, honestly, I'm just, see, you need to go to APAPA. I went visiting about 2 weeks ago. It was practically impossible for us to move. I had to park somewhere and take a bike.
Let me check if Olumide has a direct experience now of the situation in APAPA. You're welcome. He's joining in from Lagos.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, sir.
Yeah, well, I would like to contribute to the topic on ground. Well, there's something I would like to make everybody to understand. The problem about Papa, I don't really blame those drivers. The solution to the problem is the shipping company. Are you getting me? Now, majority of those containers you see, they pay too much every day. When they load from the terminal, from the port rather, and they deliver their goods to wherever place they're going to, they have to return the container back to the terminal.
Yeah.
And every day, they pay as much as 20,000 for demurrage. Now, when Governor Someone said we can fix the problem within 30 days, I just started laughing. If they want to fix the problem, I'm telling you today, right now, let him summon all the shipping companies. If you summon all the shipping companies, I tell them that, okay, anybody that loads in APAPA should not take back their container to that port. Let them go and take it somewhere else. That is the problem. Majority of those containers are empty containers.
All right.
There's no magic. I'm just telling you the fact on ground. And now, the security agent...
Olumide, many thanks. Mojeed, let me redirect your answer, if you will, now. Like I said, now, what's there? The government has already given a presidential directive to ameliorate the situation there. But then you both have, identified loopholes. So how do we harness all this? He's also talked about the involvement of shipping companies as well, looking like the government is on its own, if I can use that balance.
See, I understand what he's saying. What Olumide just said, but then, you see, if the roads are okay, were we not returning these containers before? If the roads are good, then the turnaround time, you take your container, if the road is good, you get to the port, you drop your container and you move, or even get to bring another this thing. Now, it takes for those who import goods, it takes hours for you to move from APAPA to wherever you're going. So, if the roads are good, the turnaround time for the container to go back will reduce. And like he said, the container terminal, the trailer park that was supposed to have been completed. Look at, there's the same thing with the international airport. There is a car park at the airport that has been abandoned for more than 15 years now. It's there. So why are we like that in Nigeria? If we fix that road, the turnaround time for people to move and the man hours we waste will be cut down tremendously. At some point, you have queues from APAPA extending to as close, as far as Maryland. It has happened in the past. And you wonder, is this a container economy? So until the road is fixed, there is no shortcut. And I think a serious problem like this calls for a serious solution. Let us declare an emergency, maybe shut down or reduce whatever activity that goes on there for like a year. Let that road be fixed. If that road is fixed, then everybody can be happy. We have newspaper houses, we have Vanguard newspapers, these day newspapers
located around
there. They don't go to the office again, and thank God for technology. But they still have to print their papers. But so most of the editors don't go to the office. They only they edit online. They are advertisers. They have to create offices around outside APAPA. Because nobody can go there and do any business.
That may even be the edge that these companies enjoy. But then there are other companies. There are other people living there. There are family houses built there. I fear that the new government in Lagos. I want to believe that it's not already helpless to the situation, even though it's not entirely on the plate of Governor Sanwo-Olu.
Yeah.
But then it's also a threat now. We're talking about diversification of the economy now, and this represents solely the non-oil sector, so to speak now. Arguably, of course, but it's also a threat somehow because it has implications, that span across the nation.
Let's tell us this. When Sanwo-Olu made that statement, he almost refuted it, but he can't escape it because these days, once you say that, whatever we say here, they could give it back to us sooner as we finished. I have to say that it is a federal problem that Sanwo-Olu dabbled into.
Yeah.
In the first place, it was a wrong step for you to dabble into a federal problem. That road doesn't belong to the Lagos State government. The activities there belong exclusively to the federal government.
So he folds his arms?
So in the first place, he made a political statement that actually has strong him at the moment. So it is honorable for him to come out and say, I'm sorry, I did not do a proper valuation of the problems, and I made mention of this. I'm working in collaboration with the president. But let's say it as it is. We are talking about the roads and government. The lives of the people who live in the streets. You know now that the articulated vehicles cannot use the roads. Now the in-streets are terrible. If you go there, you fall ill. The epidemic that looks at the people who live in those areas in the faces now is what the government will be praying not to happen, because it's another level of problem for them.
All right, gentlemen, let's move on, really. We hope that, everything, things get sorted out over there for the sake of everyone, indeed. To the northeast now, where rocky and hilly GWOZA in BORNO State wasn't so popular, some would say, until 2014, when Boko Haram insurgents struck the town of about 275,000 people. There, terrorists pillaged, killed and maimed men, women, children were also not left out. And then the group declared it the headquarters of its caliphate. Several persons, including the Emir of GWOZA, Mohammed Shehu Tinta, fled their ancestral home from Maiduguri, Adamawa and Abuja. It was later that the army liberated GWOZA from the jaws of the insurgents. And on Monday this week, Emir Shehu Tinta returned home 5 years after his displacement. He returned to the rousing welcome of many residents. Elsewhere in ZAMFARA, the State Director of Budget, Hamza Salihu, and one other person kidnapped along Kacha Kefi Road have also regained their freedom. It's not known if ransom was paid to secure their release. But let's watch the report of the Emir of GWOZA's return.
The Emir was accompanied by BORNO State Deputy Governor and the Senator representing BORNO South Senatorial District amidst tight security. The Maiduguri-GWOZA highway goes through the heart of the Sambisa forest and still remains one of the most dangerous highways in BORNO State. The Emir was received amidst cheers as he entered the ancient town of GWOZA, known for its breathtaking mountain ranges which cuts across the landscape of the one-time caliphate of the Boko Haram sect. He is a happy man as he rejoins his kinsmen who had long awaited his return after the recapture of GWOZA in 2015. The BORNO State's Deputy Governor welcomed the Emir back to his ancestral homeland.
We know as government you have been so worried about the plight of your people, and that is why we accompanied you back home. Sleep overnight, discuss issues affecting you and iron them out. Because we know at these trying times you need the support of the government, and the government is ready to give you that support, sir.
Some security vehicles were presented to the Emir to boost security and tractors to support farmers in cultivating their farmlands. Indigenes of GWOZA expressed joy at the return of their Emir.
We felt very happy, even the communities were very, very happy. These are something that we have long been expecting. And thank God, we thank His Excellency, the Executive Governor of BORNO State, for locating our Emir to our town. In fact, we are very much happy about that one.
If Emir is there in the home, majority of our people, youths, some of their people that they are staying outside the town, they will happy to come home.
And despite security being a major challenge, the Emir urged sons and daughters of GWOZA to return home. The ancient town still bears its historical look, but indigenes are restricted within the town. The return of the Emir is expected to cause a drastic change in the town's fortunes and bring a better lease of life to residents of GWOZA.
Indeed. Well, so Emir Shehu Tinta is back in GWOZA town to his ancestral homeland, to his domain, of course, as ruler there. But Mojeed, what does this mean for you? What does this mean for the people?
It's very historic, and I think we should let our viewers and Nigerians know that in May 2014, his father was killed by Boko Haram insurgents while traveling from GWOZA to Gombe to attend a function. 2 weeks later, or rather, precisely on June 11, 2014, he was installed as the emir, and the Boko Haram insurgents came, overran the village, and 6 months later, they took over the village. So since then, since 2014, he's been in an IDP camp. So it's a thing of joy that he is back now to GWOZA, to his palace, and I hope that because that place is very, very close. I mean, it's been constantly under attack by the Boko Haram insurgents, but I think now that he's back, it will give it will boost the morale of the indigents of them. You can see how elated they are to receive their emir, and farming activities will improve. But I think our government should ensure that there is no repeat occurrence of what happened between 2014 and 15, because that highway, the GWOZA highway, I mean, it's very, very dangerous and prone to attack by the Boko Haram insurgents. And I want to believe that adequate security has been put in place to ensure that the lives and property of the people living there is not put at risk.
Indeed. That plea, that concern in Mojeed's voice also rings same for all, for even most of the people there who also expect that the peace there is heightened. The reconstruction work that the new government has also promised is enhanced and actually actualized for everyone. Adeni.
Well, in the first place, let us look at certain things that made BORNO prone to such misfortune, as it were. It was installed in July, as Moshood said. It was sent packing in August, Mojeed. It was August of 2014.
Yeah.
You can imagine how short-lived that was.
Especially given the fact that his father was
even killed. So the man has gone through a lot. But let's say this. Let's put it together. At the turn of the century, over 50% of males in BORNO have not had an education. Over 50% of people in BORNO at the turn of this century, they've not had education. So if you had in that state 10 million men, 5 million had never gone to school. You're talking about an economy that has its own structure, its blueprint in the 21st century. How will such men fit into it and their lives could be made meaningful? And oftentimes, if you can't get an education, it becomes difficult for you to get the skills necessary because your transactions will also be done with the language of the education you didn't get. That's established. BORNO State is the second largest by land mass in this country after Niger. 70,898 square kilometers. The Mandara Mountains surround BORNO State. BORNO State is not developed enough. As we speak, even communication provisions in that state is also not in adequate provision. As a matter of fact, it's one of the plea of the Emir Tinta when he came and said, please restore communication so that at least we can keep in touch with one another. That's the word. So whatever it is we're doing at the moment is even preliminary. And I can say here that investigative reporters can go back to GWOZA 2-3 months after this time to confirm if the fanfare and the security deployed to that place is still the same way it is. Don't forget, the Emir is just one out of millions that need to be catered to. What is the population or what is the number of the security operatives we have? Police in excess of 350,000. Oftentimes, internal security is carried out by what? By the police. But you know that when it comes to insurgency, police force in this country takes certain place. The Nigerian army is saddled with equal responsibility. What's the number? Maybe in excess of 400,000. How many of them can you deploy to the second largest state in the country? When we talk about the problem of Nigeria, we create a strategic approach to dealing with it part of which I've been able to raise.
Let's even relate it now with the situation in the other part of the north, where ZAMFARA is also had haters taking its own blows. The immediate case now before us of Hamza Halilu, while he has been freed, unfortunately, the co-passenger in that vehicle, talking about Kabiru Ismail, was murdered. The army, we keep saying the army, but before you respond, we have an engineer joining us from Lagos here, Engineer Nuru.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. You're welcome.
You all. First one, I've been trying to reach people's things.
Glad you could join us.
Concerning the money minimum wages we discussed over the past. I think all the governors that refuse to pay, let them package the office and go away. Governor Makinde that said that I have friends to pay the money. Don't you know how many access that is declared? How in South Africa, so many billions of money in it.
Well, that is his
All right. Thank you very much. Mojeed, please carry on.
No, that's the governor's personal asset before he came to office. He can't use his own personal money to pay minimum wage. I think we should understand that. Yeah. And on the kidnap and the release, it's unfortunate that the other passenger lost his life, and the report is that we got from NAN is that we are not sure whether ransom was paid. I can tell you that ransom was paid. Even when Falai was abducted, then he paid ransom, even while the police denied that no ransom was paid. He said, I paid this money, my people paid it. I mean, I have evidence.
And the police and security would discourage ransom.
That is it. As a matter of fact, well, as part of security tips, they will say, well, people are encouraged not to disclose that ransoms were paid. But then, if you want to discourage somebody from saying, admitting that he paid ransom.
Are you reimbursing the person?
Correct. Are you reimbursing the person? So, we need to, see, our security architecture, I keep talking about it. These people get paid huge sums of money and there's no trace. So, and it encourages others to continue the heinous acts. No serious conviction has been made, no serious punishment of a kidnapper. I mean, we've not had any such. So that of Evans has been on for how many? It's been lingering for 3 years when there are hard facts on the ground. So until we start doing justice, serving justice as quickly as is practicable, then we'll continue to battle this menace of kidnapping and armed banditry. And even beyond the security agencies now putting the heat on them, Niyi, for you, what other areas can the government also tackle? Can we widen this net?
Let's say this.
To nab them?
Excuse me, you're talking about the civil service. That's how we started now, and the salary is not paid. Now, for the period that people have remained in penury, they have responsibilities. When schools open, they pay school fees. The children must eat, they must be clothed. That in itself opens them up to all forms of illicit means of getting wealth, and that's a fact of the matter. If my children, for instance, are not properly provided for, and I discourage them from looking at the neighbor's pot when the cook is actually serving the meal, that's going to be very bad, because my responsibility for it is to provide for them. I've used that to say that government oftentimes tells people, be good citizens, do this. Government, first of all, must address its own side of the problem before making such statements. Look at the Power Holding Company of Nigeria. The federal government is the biggest debtor to it. The federal government continues to use power generation systems. I'm saying that government must, first of all, deal with its own problems, then tell the people what to do, then they follow suit. Leadership, oftentimes to be efficient and effective, must be exemplary.
Gentlemen, that will be all for now. I really must appreciate you both, Mojeed and Adeni Yukunu, for all your insights on the program today. Our regular analyst, of course, Babajide Kolade Otoju is not around, and he will join us very soon. Thanks to you all for keeping us company, and to all the calls that came in. We know many more. We're trying. Hopefully tomorrow you can be a part of the program. Join us again tomorrow for another episode of the program. Indeed, you could also watch Journalists Hangout on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. And our feedback channel is Journalists Hangout at tvcnews.tv. Thank you for watching. I'm Kemi Fola Adeyemo. Bye for now, and God bless Nigeria.